Hey guys, real quick shout out to our buddies over at Buzzard Roost Saddles. Buzzard Roost Saddles was born in the swamps of Santa Maria, South Louisiana, and their purpose is to get you standing over your next carcass so you can pick them clean. I'm excited to be able to now offer you a 10% discount on Buzzard Roost Saddle hunting gear. If you're looking to get into the saddle hunting game or are looking to change your current saddle setup, be sure to check out Buzzard Roost Saddles. Use code HTWPC10 at buzzardroostsaddles.com to save 10% today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. I'm your host, Adam Bowlds. Today, I'm joined with Shawn Walters of Bullman Outdoors. How you doing, Shawn?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for taking the time to come on here. I just bought some of you guys' products, and I've been hearing a lot about them. So, I hooked up with you, talked to you a little bit on Instagram. I was like, you're like, let's do a podcast. So I was like, let's do it, man. I love what I see on the website, so I'm looking forward to getting those in the mail, hopefully this week.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I just want to give you a minute to kind of introduce, tell a little bit about yourself, and then kind of touch on how you got involved in hunting and the outdoors, if that was something that you started as a kid or later on in life.
Yeah, well, my name is Shawn Walters. I live here in Southern Ohio. I've been a hunter my whole life. When I was 8 years old, I got $40 for my birthday, and I bought my first BB gun, and I head out and I started shooting birds. And pretty much the first day I had that gun, and then I just graduated to hunting squirrels and rabbits with the BB gun, and got my first bow, I think, when I was maybe 10. And started shooting a bow then, and didn't really have anyone in my family that hunted. I just, I was kind of I always tell people I was just born to hunt because there wasn't really any influence there. It was just something that I just naturally loved, and I've hunted, I've been hunting ever since.
Now, so you got the BB gun when you were a kid. How did you kind of graduate to like deer and stuff like that? Did you have a buddy or anybody that showed you around, or you just went to the archery shop and picked up a bow, or how'd that kind of play out?
Well, I just started shooting a bow. I had a friend from school that he had a bow, and I thought it was super cool. He was a kid that I shot birds with pellet guns, and he had a bow. His dad took him hunting and stuff. And from early on, I was just obsessed with white-tailed deer. My first memories were going to the library when you first started to read. And, I looked for books, wildlife books. And specifically I looked for white-tailed deer, and they had American Hunter magazine and Field and Stream. And I just, I would take all the back issues of magazines they had, and I just searched for articles on white-tailed deer. And I just read, for my whole life. I've just been, a reader. I just read and learned just a massive amount from books, and then just spent tons and tons of time out in the woods, scouting and just hanging around the woods, learning, what deer did and where they did it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, this intuition to want to hunt and stuff. Some people are born to want to play sports, which I'm definitely not athletic. Some people are born to be engineers, but like, I'm with you on that. Like, I feel like I just came out of the womb just wanting to hunt and wanting to be in nature. It's just something wired in my brain that way. And it's always nice to talk to somebody that's wired like that also, because when you talk to people who are not obsessed with hunting like us, they kind of think you're a little bit off your rocker sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
it's kind of hard to have conversations, to be honest, with people. I know about 2 or 3 things, and that's it. If you don't know about those things, then I'm not really sure what to talk about.
Yeah, they just look at you funny, like, when are you gonna shut up? They're just looking at you, shaking their head, like, So we're getting, I'm getting close to deer season here. Kentucky archery, which I'm from Indiana. I only live about 20 minutes from Kentucky, but it starts on Saturday. And then October 1st is our opener in Indiana. But I know everybody's getting fired up for it. When's Ohio's opener?
I'm not sure exactly, to be honest. It's the beginning of October, or maybe one of the last few days of September, but it's usually I think it's usually the first Saturday in October. But I'm not sure exactly when it is this year. I'm not prepared, to be honest. I've just been working on these new steps and stuff, but
Yeah.
I'll get ready as quick as possible.
It's funny. I always say every year, like after season, I'm going to be like, I have a whole year. I'm going to be so prepared. And now I am like, let's see, so like 4 or 5 days out, and I'm not prepared at all. It's like I will never learn my lesson. But as you know, as a hunter, everything's always changing, and you're always changing gear, reevaluating. Circumstances change, so like I don't know if you can ever really fully be prepared. I don't know if there's ever
Yeah,
that point where you reach the peak of the mountain where you're like, I'm good to go. You might think you are till the first hunt, maybe.
yeah. There's always things you always discover. Oh wow, I wish I had have done this or would have done that. It doesn't matter how much work you do. There's always things that you could have done or would have done or wish you'd have done. Had you had more time.
Yeah. So, like I said, everybody's probably getting fired up for deer season. People want to hear deer hunting content. So, we're going to jump into some property management. So, I've got a list of questions here. We're going to kind of run through you being, a property owner. And I know we talked a little bit before the show, a small property owner. I want to pick your brain on, I guess, what you're doing on this property, and then certain situations maybe for guys like you with a small piece of property that maybe don't have a lot of money to put into it, or they don't have the resources to really hold deer. So how they can actually manage a property and still make the most out of it when they don't have a 500-acre tract with food, bedding, water sources, all that good stuff. So we'll start with the first one. If you can just kind of paint the picture of your property and kind of explain to everybody what it looks like, I guess, in detail, so we can all imagine, um, what we're looking at as we dive further into this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I started with, of course, your overall context is, a huge part of it. And that's as in what your neighbors have. If your neighbors have a big giant bean field, then, you may do something differently than if your neighbors have a 500-acre chunk of woods. But around me, the habitat's pretty mixed. There's woods and fields, and I started off with a 40-acre chunk. Well, actually, it was 20 acres, and then I added 20 more. But 40 acres is kind of what I basically started with, and about 15 acres in the front was just a bean field, and then the rest, about 25 in the back, was woods. And I kind of went in and I just had them, they cut some timber. Ideally I would have had a forester. At the time I didn't have a forester. I didn't know much about timber harvest, but if you don't get a forester, typically people do what they call high grading, and that's just they take the big mature trees and it's not done quite properly. But anyway, we went in and we took some trees out and we got opened some canopy up and let some daylight in, and that grows to early successional growth. That's kind of the big thing that I've tried to do here was grow more early successional growth and increase diversity of habitat. Ideally you want as many different kinds of habitat, even on small acres, really. But the thing that I really focused on here was creating cover. And what I did, I took the 15 acres of beans that we had, and I just let it all mainly grow. And I took half of one of the bean fields, and we put it in a conservation easement program through the Natural Resource and Conservation Service, and it's a wetland restoration program. And they do a lot of different things there. It's not just digging a hole, but they took some areas and they made some recreated some wetland areas, and there's a lot of cattails there now, and they planted native grasses, and it's gotten real thick. And there's deer bed around there and just travel in there, and all the different plants that grow. It's a huge part of the deer's diet. Deer eat all different kinds of plants, so that's why the diversity is important, to have all different kinds of plants. And some of the things that I found really interesting was just simply letting things grow. A guy named Craig Harper, he writes some stuff for the NRCS, but he's really big on early successional growth. And he says the best thing you can do for your habitat is just quit mowing the grass and quit cutting things down and just let it all grow up. And then you can kind of see what happens from there. And that creates cover and diversity of habitat and a lot of different food. And that, just letting the bean fields grow, deer start bedding close to the house, close to the road. Deer just start bedding. They just start bedding all over it. When you create that cover, especially when there isn't, a good cover around that isn't being that doesn't have pressure. If people are going in and out of places, so the key is to create. And in my opinion, this situation here is create more habitat, create more cover, and to stay out of it and just let the deer have those areas.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. I've hunted my fair share of private land, but it's never anything that's been managed. So I'm pretty much a public land guy, more or less nowadays. But when I think about property management, and I just have a skewed view of it, I think. I think of this well manicured field, and I think
Mm-hmm.
of, like these perfect cut lines in the timber and stuff. So basically you're telling me is like let it go back to its natural state pretty much, and that's kind of the
Well,
route you're going with.
to a certain point, it's early successional growth is when you just first start letting your property grow, you'll have just flowering weeds basically, or different flowering plants start growing, and then you start having a little bit of woody browse, and then you have young trees, and then those trees grow, and then if you just keep letting it grow, eventually it just goes back to the mature woods. So there, at some point, you need to come up with some sort of plan where you'll keep turning back the succession of growth. Where if you just quit mowing it for 20 years, you're going to have a young forest, or it's going to be smaller trees as opposed to thicker areas with briars and brambles. You're going to have the canopy at some point. The canopy is going to close. From the trees grow up, their canopy closes. Sunlight no longer gets to the floor. The deer eat everything on the bottom, and now you don't have leaves growing 6 feet down, and it's open under there, and then the habitat severely decreases for being beneficial for white-tailed deer anyway.
So I guess the first thing is pretty much everything that you covered like in the process. So is that like the first year that you're doing all that? You're going through and cutting the timber and letting the beans just kind of go, or how long does that process, like unmanicured per se, play out? Is that like 1 year or 5 years?
It's well, you can cut your timber, as soon as you can get a forester in there and somebody to cut your timber. That can happen fairly quick, when you have a plan and you have somebody do that. But letting things grow, to grow it, it's probably close to at least 4 years, 3-4 years, you start seeing where deer, I mean, they can bed in there sooner, but it's more of a nighttime. I think, in order to get daytime bedding and deer staying in their bedded, it's more of a 3, 4, 5 year type thing where, you're depending too on how quick your woody browse comes in, like dogwoods and maples and stuff like that. The more you get woody browse growing a little bit bigger, the more cover that creates and the quicker that happens. So ultimately it's probably a 3 to 5 year deal where before it really starts getting thick and looking good.
So what would be like your short-term and long-term objectives? I mean, obviously if you're thinking 4 to 5 years for it to be, let's just call it decent or whatever, are you pretty much staying out of it for those first few years as far as hunting wise goes?
Well, yeah, I like to create, grow those areas, let those areas grow, and then kind of have a perimeter around them and
Okay.
just work around those areas. And then, you can hunt the perimeters and leave the sanctuary areas. That's the big thing is those deer will bed, they'll bed as close. There was beds 40 yards from my house in an area that, I didn't go in from spring until summer, and then I end up cutting the trail back into the woods, and I see that there's a little hill back through there, and there's deer laying all along that hill, and it's just because I hadn't gone in there, But once you
Mhm.
go in there, then the deer, you cut a trail through there or start walking through there, then the deer they start bedding other places.
How do you kind of go about setting goals towards like your overall vision? I imagine like so you get a property. I'm just gonna start like from day one, like you just bought it. Um, you said cutting timber and stuff is I guess that's like the first step is to open that canopy up. But as far as like goals, like short term goals, like if you had a checklist, um, like what order does it go in? Like if you're gonna go into your property, you would start with the timber maybe and like the bean fields and stuff. But is there more to it? I imagine there has to be.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to it. I think a huge aspect, obviously, well, one of the first things that you're going to look at is, what's around you, where, like, for instance, I have a couple of tree lines that come off of one side of my property has a tree line that comes off of it. So the deer running back and forth there, they're crossing the road in the front. I know that the deer had crossed there in the past, and there was a good bit of cover on the other side of the road, even up where I had a bean field, and the deer would cross there at night, and then maybe in the rut, the bucks might run through that bean field, going from one woodlot to the next. But if you let that corridor grow up, then you have more. You can have bedding in that area and daytime movement. Where before it was just a bean field, there wasn't any movement up there, especially by the road. Now I have a blind that I set right on the corner of the driveway and the road. So, I guess, as far as setting goals, it would depend on your objectives, what kind of objectives, that you were after, and that your objectives would depend on, the property itself, what it's missing, what it needs, and then the properties around that, what do they have that, offsets the things that you don't have. So it's really kind of a complex, as far as setting goals, ultimately it depends on your objectives, and each objective is, objectives would be different depending on different properties and, your neighbors.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it depends on too, like if you are a meat hunter or if you're like an antler kind of guy that you want to grow big
Mm-hmm.
deer. Like, I imagine you could build a property quicker if you were just like trying to shoot as many deer as you could. It kind of like wouldn't matter so much as if you're trying to grow like a 180-inch deer. So, I guess I'll ask you this: like, what is your objective? Is it to grow big deer or?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with large racks.
Yeah,
I've forever I have been, and I don't. I'll shoot. I'll actually shoot. I guess a lot of they're fawns. Ultimately, they were born in the spring, and in the fall they may not have spots or they don't have spots. But so I don't have anything against shooting something like that. That's actually delicious if you're gonna
yeah,
eat one. But as far as shooting bucks, I want to shoot something that's a mature buck, 3.5 at least, and then you know, other than that, I'm just I just like watching the bucks, and I'm just I'm happy not killing deer. I'm just happy being out there, and yeah, the big goal is to shoot a big mature buck, and if that doesn't happen, which it typically doesn't, it's still a good day.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of part of the whole thing too. Is right. Even if you don't shoot a big deer, you can still see how much your work and everything has progressed. Even if you're sitting in a stand and you do see him get up from the edge of the field on a bed or whatever it is, like like all the work that you did put him there or like gives him the ability to live there and grow there. So I think a lot of people get caught up in like, I failed because I didn't kill like a giant deer this year. But like, did you fail in like the long term thing is you built this property to hold these deer and everything and conservation. And I think like that's just like a win, to me too. Um, I guess I know that has to be like a full-time job. Like you're probably out there all the time. I don't know if you have a tractor. I imagine you have some kind of something to work the ground. But is there ever days where you're just like, God, I just don't even know why I do this? Like it's hot out, or like I don't know, like it's late, you want to go to bed. I imagine it gets tough. So like how do you make yourself kind of push through that?
Well, it's just, I mean, I just love it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a, I'd say I'm a whitetail habitat junkie. It's just, I love early successional growth and the pollinators and the bees and butterflies. It's just, I'm just obsessed with habitat and whitetail deer. And it's just, it's just something I love. What makes it frustrating is trespassing.
Mm.
That's the most frustrating thing in the world for me is when you go out of a place like I have the woods that I have. They'll be off limits. Starting in late August, and I don't go back there. Waiting until the first second week in November, and then go back to find out that there's somebody been coming in from my neighbors, and they've been hunting the place that I haven't, my property, right on the edge of my property, or even trespassing in my property, hunting somewhere that I haven't even gone in, and
I'd
that makes
love
it
to.
really painful.
I would love to talk about that. How do you combat that? I mean, it seems like it's been an issue for you in the past. I mean, are you doing cameras? Are you like hearing through word of mouth? Like, how do you you calling the game warden? Does it ever really get solved?
Um, Not really. I think you
Yeah.
just talk to people. I have called the game warden. I've talked to the neighbors, and I try to talk to everybody and try to talk to the people hunting around. I just try to be visible and talk to people and I don't necessarily put cameras up because I mean I have put some cameras up, but
They'll steal those too, won't they?
yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
turn. I don't typically put them up to monitor for trespassing though.
Now, this question kind of came to mind, so I think you're the perfect guy to answer this. So, I have done my fair share of asking for permission, and I've asked for permission on properties where I don't know that person through Adam. I'm just like going to take a long shot and send a letter, but like, let's just pretend you're sitting down eating dinner with your family, you hear a knock on the door. Maybe you're done with dinner. Let's consider you're done with dinner so you're not in a bad mood. And some guy knocks on your door and he's like, "Hey man, I just want to see like if you would give me permission to hunt." Um, what would you do in that kind of situation? Are you like no, or are you like thinking in your mind no, but you want to like pick the guy's brain a little bit, see what kind of dude he is? Like, I don't know. I just love to hear what a private landowner would do in that situation, because I'm trying to work the system here and see what I need to say to these people.
Well, I definitely tell the guy no. I mean, that's just unless I know the person. You talking about if you don't know him from
Yeah,
Adam.
yeah,
But I mean, I just tell him, I explain to him what I do and that I hunt, like,
yeah,
seriously and manage the place. And I'll strike up a conversation. I want to know, ask the guy, do you hunt anywhere else around here? Where do you hunt? And I'll, because I have had people come and ask to hunt before,
yeah,
but yeah, as far as getting on a place, the best way is to have some sort of in,
yeah.
know somebody, be from somewhere around there, have some sort of reason you can connect, or take a kid or your wife, or
Yeah,
that's
you think the kid trick's gonna work? Because I got a 1-year-old and I'm thinking about door knocking with him. Is that gonna sweeten the pot or what?
yeah. I mean, it definitely won't hurt. You think go walking up to the door carrying your 1-year-old asking for
Yeah.
permission, that's definitely going to tilt the odds at least a little bit in your favor.
So I tried an experiment last year. I picked a lot of areas out, I think around 50 different properties. And like I said, I didn't know any of these people. And I just sent out letters. They were signed. They included a picture of my wife and I and my son, trying to, be humanized a little bit so they don't think I'm some just, killer or whatever. But I wasn't turned down because of, like I thought it was going to be people scared of getting sued, or people like scared of you falling, getting hurt, or like shooting their house. The number one thing that people told me, and I got a lot of responses, which really shocked me too, was somebody already hunts here. So,
Mm.
I mean, I respect that, but that was not like I was expecting it to be like a legal issue because I hear that like a lot. Property owners don't let people hunt because they don't want to get sued and lose their thousands of acres that they've acquired through the years through their family or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. Maybe I'll try door knocking. I haven't tried that yet. I'm quite shy. I don't know if I want to go that
Mm.
route.
I mean, I've got permissions just knocking on the door and being nice,
Yeah. Yeah,
That
maybe
definitely
I'll
that has worked.
lay it out real quick on and you can kind of summarize, but like I don't really know what to say to them. What do you knock on their door and you're like, "Hey, I'm so and so. You don't really know me, but like I want to hunt your woods." I mean, it's got to be more complex or well thought out than that.
Well, I mean, that's just kind of the gist, just lay it out there, tell them, you don't want to hunt all the time. I tell people, I hunt by myself or I'm going to hunt with my son, who started hunting with me a little bit. And, I just hunt with a bow,
Mhm.
so I'm not asking permission to hunt somebody else's property with a gun, gun season. I was kind of I don't gun hunt a whole lot. I gun hunt here with my son actually is what I do.
Yeah.
But I tell people I'm just looking to hunt a few times. I don't want to be there all the time. I'm not going to take anybody with me. I'm not going to give anyone else permission. Super respect your property, and I'm if I'm only want to hunt certain deer. I'm not out to just kill everything unless you want me to kill everything, and then I'll do what I can.
Now, do you have you ever had any crazy encounters? Like, I don't know, maybe you knock on a vegan's door and they're like chasing you with a broom or something. Anything crazy like that or no?
Yeah, I have actually. There's
Yeah.
there's a property back behind us, and it's an amazing piece of property. And I was a big double drop time buck I'd seen there one year, and I went and asked these people property permission. And back in the day, I used to go to the tax and map office before things were online. I'd go to the tax and map office and actually look at aerial photos and plats, and it was it was quite a job. But I found this property and I asked permission, and the lady was just mean. She was, no, you cannot hunt here. So, there was this big buck that was here, and she told me the story of this big buck, and somebody shot it, and they just cut its head off and left the buck
Mm.
there. And she was just seriously jaded from this event. And I was, I apologize. I hate to hear that happened. That's a terrible thing. That really makes it hard on, good people and blah, blah, blah. And so there was that. And then it was probably 10 years later. I'm going back and I'm trying, looking for permissions again. I go and knock on this door for this piece of property back here. And I knock on the door and I ask permission. And as soon as I asked permission, this lady started on with that rant again. And I immediately remembered, oh, this is the same house that I knocked on the door
Oh
10
my
years ago.
gosh, you forgot.
It was the same lady. And I drove by the property a few days later, and there was brand new big no hunting signs put up. She never got over that.
Did she remember you?
I don't know if she remembered me or not, but I sure remembered her when she started in on it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's sad how, one bad apple can ruin the batch, but I understand it. Like I try to look at it from both sides. Like I look at it from our side and then I try to put myself in her shoes. Like if I didn't hunt and somebody, cut the head off of a deer in my yard or whatever the case might be, I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
no, nobody's hunting here too. You guys are savages. No way.
Right.
So I get it. But yeah, I mean, definitely door knocking. I'm scared to do it, but I think I need to
I
take
feel
that. I
you.
need to take that route. So let's jump back to like equipment and stuff. Like, you know, what are you using to do all this work? Are you hiring it out, or do you have a tractor? I know you said you hired some people to log stuff out.
Yeah, well, I just a couple years ago, I did cut a few paths through there where I tried to plant some food plots. So, but I just borrowed the neighbor's tractor, and but mainly just a chainsaw. If you have woods, I hired people to, let a logger come in, cut some logs out, and then I've done a lot of hinge cutting. Hinge cutting is a great tool to use for habitat, but mainly just hinge cutting and with a chainsaw and just letting things grow. Just letting things grow is one of the best things you can do. A lot of people, they want, they'll have people they may have 200 acres and they'll have 100 acres of beans, and their neighbors around them will have, 500 acres of beans, and they're not farming them themselves, and they're getting paid, maybe $100 a year, or, maybe $500 a year to let somebody plant their 100 acres of beans. And that's just, actually, I think with the gas prices and the things that the government's doing, I think it's going to be really difficult for people to farm beans on other people's property, and for the non-farming landowner to have someone plant beans on them. It's going to be difficult, because we're kind of to the point now with hay where, if you don't own the property, it's kind of hard for somebody to
Mm-hmm.
even bale hay for you, because, with the prices of fuel and
Yeah.
whatnot. But
So you think
the
that's you? I'm sorry. Do you think that's gonna like? I guess maybe not in the first year, but like in the next, I guess 5 years, like is that gonna affect a lot of the deer around you? You think?
um, well, there's I mean, it could, if people quit planting as many beans, I think
Right.
there's probably enough beans around here for the deer that, if they quit farming some of these farms and start letting them grow up, man, it could be an amazing thing, creating all that cover and all that early successional growth and all that forage, and, for all year long. That would be an amazing thing for the wildlife, and for me, maybe, I guess, I don't know. I'm not sure how it affects the landowner, but, I kind of have some thoughts on, ways we can work with non-farming landowners that, are currently letting people plant beans.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess what you're saying is the deer need the beans obviously for food source, right? But they don't need as many as is out there right now. So like they could, although it's gonna probably hurt the landowners because they're not getting like a check at the end of the year. Um, it's gonna be a positive thing for the deer than having that stuff grow up like that.
Yeah, I think it would be depending on, each situation is different, but just overall, I think, there's way more beans than there is cover in a
Yeah.
lot of places anyway.
Hmm. Um, so kind of like back to your property. Since you've started doing all this, I guess my first question is, how long have you been doing this? Have you had this property for 20 years or is it something fairly new?
About 15 years I've been working on this property.
Okay. So I guess we'll just start with like, I guess we kind of covered year one, but maybe we'll just go to now. What changes in wildlife and like animal activity and growth have you seen like through that progression of 15 years? And you could maybe lay it out per 5 years, maybe that might, give a pretty good, like paint the picture for everybody.
Well, since I've started letting things grow, when I first moved here, and I was in the middle of a bean field, and, I've kind of put my house in the middle of the field. So I had beans all around me, and, I'd see deer back at the edge of the woods, and, you know, that was about it really. But
Hmm.
since things have grown up, and, and I'd mow the place periodically, and, it's probably maybe I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago where I quit, or less, but around that time is when I quit cutting anything and let anything be cut anywhere. And, since that time, things have really grown up around the house. And like I said, there's deer. I see, deer come up in the yard all the time. Turkeys are in the yard. And, I find deer beds, you know, right by the house, right by the driveway, where before the deer were back in the woods. They were just back in the woods, they were, and then there weren't any. And there's an area next to me that's also grown up. It started growing basically the year I met here, or moved here. So it's been growing for probably 15 years, and there's tons of deer bedding in that area where it was a bean field, when I first moved here, and they just started letting it grow. And it's, deer just flock in there. And, that's the biggest thing, is just, the wildlife, the whitetails, they just take over and start bedding it. And the same with the turkeys. They come up in these fields, these grown up fields, and they nest in the fields where, if it was just a bean field before, and it had beans in the summer, deer ate them in the summer, and then a little bit of the beans in the winter. But it's more beneficial all year long.
So I just want to get this clear. Are you allowing somebody to plant on your property, or is there any kind of like food
No, we don't. I don't
sourcing
have
that?
any tillable. I've got some trees. I've planted some trees from bare root. I've got apples and pears and persimmons and chestnuts and some red buds and that I planted. I have in rows. I planted them from containers, and I've planted a few around the property. But now they're to the point where um, probably next year I'll bring in a skid steer with tree spade and start putting, kind of laying out different areas where I'm going to plant um, some other trees, because some of the persimmons I planted from seed, and they're probably close to 15 feet tall now, so they're ready to be. They're good sized trees and should be producing persimmons pretty soon. And the chinkapin chestnuts are already producing chestnuts, and so that is one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to plant trees, things that I don't have to keep planting, like food plots every year.
Hey guys, we've recently partnered with the social media platform Go Wild to combat mainstream social media censorship. If you're tired of having your hunting and outdoor posts taken down and flagged, be sure to check out Go Wild, which was built by outdoorsmen and women just like you. Go Wild is a free social community. Not only are your photos not censored, but they are also encouraged on Go Wild. Go Wild gives you points for things like sharing your trophies, gear reviews, and inviting friends. As you earn more points, you unlock awesome rewards such as gift cards, free swag, knives, and huge discounts on brands like Garmin and Vortex. Oh, and if you create a free account, you can unlock $10 just for trying it out. Use code HTW to receive 10% off your order today. Download Go Wild at gowild.com or in the App Store. Right. Yeah, that must be amazing to just like take something from a seed and watch it, grow into something
Mm.
15 feet and then see like a deer eating underneath it. I mean, that in itself forget about like shooting the deer. Like that in itself is pretty impressive.
Mm.
Um, so do you have a water source on your property?
Yeah, the easement they planted, the wetland. There's vernal pools over there,
Okay.
and there's yeah.
So you've got cover and you've got like, the trees only produce like in the fall a little bit. So like the deer are not eating on that stuff all the time, right?
Right.
So I guess we're going to dive into like, if you had a property that let's say only has beans or we're going to say it only has one of the three, food, water, or cover. How can somebody manage their property in a way? Let's say they can't dig a lake or like, obviously they could put in like a water trough or whatever, like the guys dig in the ground. But like if they only had one thing, what should they mainly like be focusing on their property if they can't make drastic changes?
Well, I mean, if I had to pick one, I would probably say cover.
Yeah.
If you have food and you don't have cover, then the deer, they're only going to be feeding there at night. So, if you have cover but not food, they're going to leave and go somewhere to eat, but you can hunt them at the edge of their beds,
Mm-hmm.
going to the property or coming back in the morning.
So water would be on the last of your list.
Water would probably be at the last of my list. Yeah. I mean, it's important, people do put in water tanks or water tubs, but I guess depends on the property too. But
Yeah.
around here there's water. There's water pretty much everywhere. There's ponds, here and there, and it's kind of hard to go. And now if you're hunting a specific location, maybe if you're hunting right next to a bedding area, and there isn't water for 100 yards or more, and you want to put in a little water tank or something to try to pull a buck out of his bed or a deer out of his bed to get a quick water source, you could do something like that. But as far as, macro, you know, wouldn't dig a pond for, unless I wanted to use the dirt, for something, but just as far as digging a pond for a water source,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be one of the things I'd probably focus on.
Yeah, I've never really dealt with that like issue or whatever, but I would have, if I was to guess, I would have said water was kind of last on the list too. Whenever I see deer killed, I see a lot less deer killed over water than I do like out of a bed or on a food source. Um, if we talk about food sources, let's say that they can't plant, they don't have a tractor, they don't have like a way to till or anything, but they have the cover, but they want to add some food sources, but they don't want to wait 15 years for, I don't know how long a persimmon tree or whatever it takes to grow, or an apple tree is probably 5 years. Is there anything that they can do for short-term goals to where they feel like they're they're making a little bit of progress? Like, what would you recommend as a food source at that point? Obviously, baiting would be like out of the picture. Would you go with like a throw and grow stuff, or just kind of?
Yeah, I'm not really certain. I'm not a big food plot guy, so
Yeah.
I couldn't. I can't really. I don't really have recommendations there. But I mean, you can just let things grow, and it's especially from a bean field. You'd be surprised. You just quit mowing a bean field, and a lot of times clover will just start growing.
Hmm.
And there was one year where I planted, some food plots back by the woods, and I didn't have much success. But the bean field that was next to me that they didn't plant that year just grew up in this massive clover. It was just big, lush clover, and the deer were feeding out in it almost every day. It was like I didn't even plant it; it just came up wild. So
There's a
you
lot of
know,
people that pay big money and put a lot of work into getting all that clover.
I know it's.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk to you because a lot of times when I hear from somebody, when you said small tract of land, I was thinking like 5 or 10 acres. Like that's like 50 acres around where I live is like a fairly big tract. But
Mm,
usually when I talk to somebody that's got like 50 acres or 40 acres, whatever, they're super big on the food plot. So it's
oh yeah.
interesting that you're kind of like, you're flip flop. You're like letting everything grow up, but it makes a lot of sense. The deer, they're used to stuff being natural. I mean, they live forever without like food plots and like people planting big giant bean fields and stuff. So
Hmm.
it makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. I know we had talked a little bit about like pollination and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about? You say you're like into butterflies or something?
Mm.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah, I
love to
love
hear
the
about that.
monarch butterflies. They're my thing. Everybody, a lot of the mobile guys, they're big into milkweed. The letting the
Yeah,
stuff
the
fly.
milkweed phase. Yeah.
And I love them. I love it too. But I love it for the actual, the butterflies. The monarch butterfly, their caterpillar. That's the only thing that it eats is milkweed.
Huh.
So you plant milkweed, and then the monarchs lay their eggs on there, and then the caterpillars eat the milkweed, and then they turn into a chrysalis and become caterpillars. And there's all different kinds of butterflies, and most butterflies they have a very limited amount of plants that the caterpillars eat. Like I said, the monarch, the only thing that the monarch caterpillar eats is milkweed, and that's
Hmm.
to me that's just a really fascinating thing. And then different like swallowtails, they eat like a Queen Anne's lace or like carrots, I think parsley, but there's just different caterpillars have very limited um, food sources that they eat. And to me, it's just really interesting. Just letting your fields, let your yard grow, and you'll have plants grow that then they all have flowers. People call them weeds, but I think the technical term for them is forbs, and it's one of the deer's. It's one of the biggest part of their diets in the summer, and all of those forbs produce a flower. And like ragweed and ironweed and um, I can't think of the yellow flower, but anyway, all the flowers. The butterflies love the flowers. The deers eat the plants. The bees get on the flowers. The butterflies get on the flowers, and it's just, it's a great thing for, you know, all wildlife from the bees all the way up to the whitetails.
So if we're seeing a lot of monarch butterflies, we're in whitetail land. Then is that what you're saying?
Well, you're in milkweed land. I'm not sure, not necessarily whitetail land, but
Yeah.
but definitely milkweed around there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely learn something new every day. I didn't realize that about them, and I didn't realize butterflies were like pretty limited on the kind of stuff that they eat. So that's pretty cool. Dealing with misinformation. So there's got to be, I mean, at some point you were like a newbie, right? So you probably didn't know like a whole lot about property management and like you're learning,
Mhm.
as you go. Um, how did people deal with misleading ideas and like misinformation? Because they might get on YouTube and we'll throw a name out like Bob. Bob's like, you need to do this, this, and this. And then they go over and they talk to Jim on YouTube, watch his video, and he's like, you need to do this, this, and this. Don't do this, which is what Bob's telling you to do. Like, how do you decide what the right route is for you? And I imagine it's probably situational, like you said, like it depends on the property too. So how do you kind of pick out what's good and what's bad?
Well, I I I studied all different kinds of people. Like there was a couple different guys from Michigan that big time whitetail habitat guys. Jeff Sturgis is one of them. I think he's actually from Wisconsin, but and then I can't think of the other guys off the top of my head. But then there's a guy from New York. Um, can't think of his name off the top of my head now either. It's been a while since I'd studied all these whitetail guys, but Jeff Jeff Dartery. That's the guys from New York's name. But I just I took. They all wrote books. I got all their books and read all their books and took notes on their books. And then they had videos and I watched all their videos. I just studied as much information from as many different people as I could, and then just kind of then I got this property and I just kind of started working on stuff and doing stuff myself and just kept. I got into the QDMA, which is now I think the NDA, but I got into the QDMA and started following their guys. That's Jeff Sturgis. He was a big QDMA guy, and um, I just read as much information and studied as many different people as I could, and just kind of tried to see just kind of what makes sense. What's the most people saying? If somebody has something that's kind of off the wall, then you kind of have to wonder, are they off the wall, or are they ahead of the curve? Because you may not know.
Yeah, it's I imagine it's probably a lot like the podcast world where you hear so and so talk about this and you hear so and so talk about this. You kind of just take all that information and just kind of try to apply it to yourself as best you can. And there's probably a lot of trial and error, I would imagine.
Yeah, like one guy doesn't pay attention to the wind, and one guy only pays attention to the wind.
Yeah, I hear that a lot with that's interesting you say that. I hear that a lot with scent control. I'll like be listening to a podcast and like scent control, like scent wafers, all this stuff. And then the next guy's like, I smoke while I'm walking to my stand as long as I got like
Mhm.
the face, the wind in my face. So yeah, I think a lot of it, like anything in hunting, is trial and error and a lot of failure, but it takes a lot of failure to kind of get to that point. At least for me, it does. I don't know about you, but I've failed a lot at deer hunting.
Oh man, is my middle name probably.
So, I want to dive into what you guys got going on at Bullman Outdoors. So, anybody that doesn't know, I just want you to kind of explain what you guys are about and give a little background of the company and how long you guys have been around.
Bowlman Outdoors, minimalist mobile hunter. That's our tagline, and we're lightweight, compact. Um, we actually started. I think it was 2017. It was actually before Tethered erupted the mobile hunting community. I hunted. I was a hang and hunt guy for oh man, for like 25 years probably now. And I used little lightweight lock on. Lock on was the brand name, lock on limb tree stand. And I tried every particular kind of step to climb trees ever invented. And I just couldn't find anything that I really liked. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to make something. I'm going to create something that I can sell, because I figured if I figured there was just probably people that had the same kind of interest that I did, and so I started trying to come up with a way that didn't damage the tree, that was lightweight, compact, and then I could put into a little case where it was all there together and super convenient. So come up with the Son approach step about 5 years ago, strap on steps. And I was using like I said, just a hang on tree stand at the time. I didn't even know what a saddle was. And Ameristeps had just went out of business right before I came on, right before I came into existence, which was super convenient. And they had the forum, the Saddle Hunter forum was there, and they guys were using the Ameristeps for ring of steps. And some of the guys on the, I boosted some ads on Facebook, and some of the guys from the forum found the steps and they started using them. And like, these could be a Ameristep replacement. And just, the forum, they got on the forum and they just started selling them. And Greg from Tethered, he got a hold of me, and Bobby Boswell from like, I can't think of the other company now, but anyway, they started talking to me, and I'm like, what in the world's a saddle? I didn't even know what a saddle was. And for a long time, I just kind of blew it off. And it's like, thought it's kind of neat or whatever. But then so many people started buying them, and I thought, well, I'll just put a package together. So I I made a ring of steps and offered that. And I was actually the first person to ever offer just a specific ring of steps for sale to the saddle hunters. And I just kind of kept going on from there and kept growing from there. And this year we have a new climbing step and a step that's designed specifically for a ring of step, that the correct angles for your feet, how they interact with the step while you're leaning in a saddle. And that hadn't happened before. All of the steps that are used for a ring of steps are basically a climbing type step, and they have hard angles where your feet interact the step, and they're kind of cause hard spots on your feet, and they're not tremendously comfortable. So the ring step, something I'm really excited about.
So I imagine building this business was not easy. So I have to ask you, like, what was so bad? And you don't have to like call any specific brands out, but like, what was it that you found to be lacking in the steps, like that made you make that plunge to like, I'm gonna invent this or like make this? And like, it must have been pretty bad. Like, you didn't just like make something up in your garage and like use it. You went the full way with it. So what was the issue? I have to know.
Well, I mean, it was just there was just a different issue with everything. There was one strap-on step that I used, and the strap slid through the buckle, and I think it was in Ameristep, and I didn't like that. And then I used the little tri-folding steps that you poke into the tree and screw into the tree,
Oh yeah.
and they worked. They actually worked well. They were very compact. They were just kind of heavy, and they took a tremendous amount of effort to get into the tree.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the other ones. I had some APIs that you put the bolt in the tree and hung the step on the bolts. And the bolts were expensive, and I just kind of felt bad screwing into every tree in the country. And then the Lone Wolf climbing sticks came out. That was when Neighbors Climb came out. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so. I had a set of those. I thought those were the coolest thing in the world. And they're heavy and big, and I felt like a pack mule. I just kept feeling like a pack mule going in the woods. And so it was just I was just been a hang and hunt guy for my whole life. Even hunting on private land, I hunted the same way. I would, there was a time where I would put steps up in the tree, but I would take my stand with me and just rehang my stand. That way I wasn't leaving sign all over of where I was.
Yeah, those screw-in steps, man, they're pretty durable, but God, you ever climb those when they get icy or wet? Those metal ones.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate to get caught on those. Never had any. I've used those quite a bit on pieces of private, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't slip off a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we've dove into the products. Do you guys offer? I mean, what kind of products do you offer? Is just the the stuff that you covered already, or do you guys offer more stuff?
Now we just said we have the steps to climb, and then we have straps to attach them with, and we have bags, a couple of different size bags to put them in. The bags, you can carry them around your chest, you can carry them on a belt around your waist, or you can attach them to your saddle. And We have those, and then we have the platform, the ring of steps, and ratchets that you can attach that with, so they're good and rock solid. And then we have tethers and lineman's belts right now, and we have ascenders, the Kong ducks, and
Mhm.
carabiners, and things like that. And but that's pretty much it. We've kind of narrowed things down. I kind of wanted to get fewer SKUs, fewer items, and then just try to sell more of the limited things that I do have.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess how many steps is like a guy looking at? Like I bought a couple steps to like hang off of my platform to kind of stretch my legs out, just to like paint the picture. Imagine for the listeners, imagine like you see a guy on a motorcycle, he puts his legs out on the far pegs, as he's going down the highway. That's kind of like what I've got going on. But like if you're gonna use them to like climb with, how many are people like buying for that?
Well, it kind of depends on where you're hunting. I usually take 12 to climb,
Okay.
and that gets me a little over 20 feet. But
Okay.
depends on the kind of areas you're hunting. I'm finding that I'm hunting, thicker areas and the canopies lower, and you don't want to climb way up into the canopy. So, I'm finding that I'm using 9 to 10, on average. Seldom am I using all 12 steps to get up the tree, and and then I'll use 6 for a ring of steps, or I'll probably use 5 of the platform steps. So, but 10 to 12 is a pretty typical amount to
Now,
take.
what are people looking at weight wise? I guess if you want to break it down just per step, that'd probably be good because some people might want to use 6, some people might want to use 12. Are they a few ounces or like half a
Yeah,
pound?
the climbing steps, or the apex steps, are 2.9 ounces a piece, and then
Okay.
the straps with a 7 foot strap is like 3.7 ounces. But depending on the size trees, you don't need 12 straps 7 feet or 10 straps 7 feet. So I don't even climb trees that I don't typically climb trees that large. So I may have one or two that's 7 feet, and then I'll trim, 4 or 5 down to 6 feet, and the rest down to 5 feet. And that cuts down on weight. It's you taking ounces out. And then it cuts down on bulk also. So typically, I think we could have 12 steps with straps for right around 5 pounds. I think it's a little less than 5 pounds, actually.
It's a lot lighter than my sticks that I currently have. Yeah. I guess how long would it take you? Obviously, you're more experienced. Let's pretend that you've never used it, but you're like you've been hunting a long time, but you never use it. So like you kind of know the game, but it's a new product. How long is it going to take me to get up in a tree to 20 some odd foot?
Well, ideally, you're going to spend some time practicing,
Hmm.
before you head out and hunt. And the thing with these steps, they're different in that the step is above the strap. So you have to step. It's important that you keep the step in the center of your foot and that you step up against the tree. There's a couple of things you have to keep in mind and do when you're stepping on them. And at first, when you're stepping on the step, they're probably not going to feel comfortable when you first step on them, and you just have to practice at ground level on your first and second steps, stepping on those steps, and learning what it is, how you have to step on them to make them comfortable and to get them solid. And then once you learn those little intricacies of how you're going to step on the steps, then then you just take a few test runs, and I'd say it's you just it's hard to say an amount of time. It's been so long since I've started climbing with these things, but it's I would I would recommend that people take a few tries, a few climbs, and a few days, even different days to practice with the steps to get familiar to with how they feel and how they work on the tree.
Yeah.
It's like shooting a bow. You think about shooting a bow, a guy shoots his bow every day for 3 4 months, but he wants to take his climbing gear right out of the box and shimmy up a tree, and then be
Yeah.
mad because he breaks a sweat and doesn't know how to do it. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, I'm totally with you. There's nothing more, and I've been in that situation where you take out a new piece of gear and you're like, "This is awesome," and then you get like halfway up the tree and you're like hanging off of it in the middle of September, in Kentucky or whatever, maybe even early October. It's hot, and you're like, "What am I doing?" Like you can't figure it out. Try not to
Yeah,
fall out of the tree. Like practice. It's definitely worth it. So
right.
are they made out of plastic or are they made out of metal?
They're plastic.
Yeah. Is
Yeah,
there
they're a
a
high density plastic with a hardener. They're super hard.
Is there a weight rating on him?
300 pounds.
Yeah. 300's a lot. I mean, 300's what I hear a lot in like the industry when it comes to any kind of weight stuff, but it's impressive for a step. I hear that a lot
Yeah,
with tree stands,
especially
but
2.9 ounces.
yeah, it's quite impressive. Do they come in different colors or is it kind of just
Right now they're just black.
yeah, cool. Um, I know you guys just came out with the new steps, but you guys have anything? There's still 6 months left in the year. You guys got anything else coming out this year? Or are you
No,
pretty
I couldn't
pretty
possibly
hunkered down with that?
imagine. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm ready to just take a few breaths and just sit. Well, not really. It sounds
yeah,
good, but I won't sit. But take a
yeah.
few breaths anyway.
It sounds good in theory. I'm the same way. It takes some rest, but just got to keep on grinding, keep on
Oh
going. But
yeah,
maybe you can take a night out and go scan the field, eat some ice cream or something. Maybe put some life back into you. Look at
yeah,
some velvet bucks.
yeah. Go get some stand sites ready. That's a day off for me.
Yeah, definitely be hot though, but definitely probably a change of scenery than being in the shop or behind the computer. So I'll hit you with this last question. I like to hit a lot of people with this because everybody's from different areas and there's different kinds of people in Ohio than there is California. So everybody's interesting no matter where you go. So do you have any crazy or wild hunting stories or experiences? And this could be from when you were 10 years old or like now, back when you used to hunt public or one time on private, just whatever it might be. But I'd love to hear a crazy story. And I know my listeners love to hear crazy stories too.
Well, let's see. Crazy. I guess one of the craziest things that happened is I had worked these toms, and I'd called them in to the bottom of the hill, and I was real particular about the shot. I didn't get a shot that I liked, and I didn't take a shot, and they started working their way up the hill. So I knew they were going to the top of this ridge, and to get to it, I had to run back behind me, back up the ridge, and circle around and go out on this along the woods. This was a long fingered ridge, kind of on a big hills in Adams County, and big wooded draws with um, grassy tops.
Mm-hmm.
So I circled around. I was trying to beat these toms before they got to the top of the hill, and by the time I got to where they were, they had got to the top of the hill and they had got to the top and they had crested and they were on the other side of this big grassy field. So I sat up in this cedar tree, just backed up in the cedar tree, gave a yelp, a couple purrs. Next thing I know, here come these turkeys over top of this hill, and I see their head peeking over the hill, and both of their heads are giving it this number as they're coming over the hill, and they're at about 20 yards or so. And I thought, man, I could shoot both of them right now with one shot. And I thought, I had to wait. You could only kill one turkey at the time.
Okay.
So I waited and they separated. And I picked the lead bird and I shot and it started flopping all around. I killed him. He started flopping all around. But the other bird didn't go anywhere. I didn't know what happened to the other bird. And I walked up
Oh,
there, and the other bird was dead. He was laying there, never flopped a single flop. So I ended up shooting both of those toms with one shot somehow. So that was probably the craziest thing.
dang.
One of the craziest things is
Just
having that.
hit him with one pellet or something, just
I
right in
guess
the
I
brain.
really am not sure what happened for sure with that other bird. If he scared him to death or hit him with one pellet or what. But
Yeah, you would think the other one might flop a little bit, but if you're aiming at one, he should have been the one to kind of drop dead. So
right.
that had to have been an issue. So like, what's the follow up on that? You get up there and you're like, oh shit. I mean, you call the game warden, obviously, or
Actually, we could kill two, but you could only tag one per day. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to take the bird back the next day to tag it in. They wouldn't let me tag them in at the same time, even though I was
Yeah.
trying to be honest and trying to do the right thing.
Right. Yeah. That man, I've never been in that situation, but like I always feel like if I get in that situation, I'm gonna be like, look, here's what happened, and they're gonna be like, yeah, sure, you didn't like get trigger happy, but like you're right. Being honest is like just be honest because they're gonna like find out, or you're gonna have like a bad conscience. You're just better off telling the truth, paying the fine,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Like I don't know, I got too guilty of a conscience, but that's crazy, man. I guess they let you keep them both though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. DNR in Ohio, pretty cool people of the encounters you've had, or
Um,
you don't have to. You can just say skip that question too. You're totally.
well, the game warden for my county was actually arrested and like disbarred or whatever you call it. And I did have one run-in with him before that on trying to. I found a deer that was dying, and it was a really large buck, and
Mm,
he actually took the rack. He shot the deer and took the rack. I hadn't killed it at that point. I hadn't even killed a deer, and I asked him what he would do, and he said, "Well, I would want to shoot my own deer." I'm like, "Well, all right, go ahead." And this was back when you couldn't hunt on Sundays, and so
oh,
he shot the deer and he took the rack, and I wanted to know what happened to the deer, but he never got back with me, and then I found out that he had been doing all kinds of shady stuff, and he actually was arrested and had multiple counts brought against him. But that's just one situation. They're
yeah,
good people. But it's just kind of that kind of
yeah.
thinking
It,
about it. That kind of sticks in my mind when you talk about the ODNR.
That goes. One bad apple can make a whole batch, bad or whatever. But most of the encounters I've had with Indiana and Kentucky has been pretty positive. But like you said, there's bad apples everywhere. So that
Hmm.
deer was dying of VHD or something.
I don't think so. I hadn't even heard of EHD back then. I think he was probably hit by a car,
Mm,
but I don't really know. I'm not really sure. I think it was just before gun season, so it was probably right around the rut.
yeah,
So he had been probably fighting or hit by a car, running looking for does. But he was a dandy. He was a 10-point typical with 3 brows on one side, 2 on the other, and he was a big. He was had like 20 inches wide. He was a big deer.
yeah. Must have took him home and hung him on his wall or something.
Yeah, he did some with him for sure.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Well, Shawn, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're an hour ahead of me, so I won't keep you too late. I'm sure you're wore out from shipping all those steps and probably want to get a little bit of shut eye. So um, I want to give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can find you on social media, and then your website as well, so they can check out what kind of cool gear you guys have to offer.
Sure. Well, our website, first off, is bullmanoutdoors.com, www. Of course. And you can find us on Facebook at Bullman Outdoors, on Instagram at Bullman Outdoors, TikTok, Bullman Outdoors, and YouTube at Bullman Outdoors. We have tons and tons of videos on climbing with what were the sawn approach steps. It's very similar to the apex step. It's just the apex step is a very much more beefed up version that's performs much better. But tons of information on there on saddle hunting. Get some hunts on there. Just all kinds of stuff on YouTube. But yeah, I appreciate it, Adam. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. And guys, Shawn, he's very responsive to me on Instagram. I reach out to him, and it's always nice to be able to talk to the actual guy and not a customer service representative or somebody that doesn't know the game. So that's very much appreciated from me, and I'm sure a lot of other people buying and stuff would be ecstatic to be able to like talk to the guy that's like making the stuff, because
Mm-hmm.
you're ultimately the guy that knows the most about it. So
For sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it again, and I'll have to catch up with you on TikTok. I put a lot of time into TikTok on there.
Mhm.
It can be informative or goofy. It's not so much you know clean cut as like LinkedIn or maybe Facebook has to be. So I'll have to catch up with you guys on there and check out some of your videos. But
Yeah,
thanks
we're
again.
we're just getting started on TikTok. That's the next frontier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll check you guys out and see what you got going on there.
Yeah, man. If you need any help navigating the TikTok space, you have my number and you can reach out to me anytime. And you need some help kind of figuring out the filters and how all that stuff works. I'm always an open book. But I appreciate it again, Shawn, and I'll catch up with you.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
All right, see you.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. If you enjoyed the show and it's brought you some sort of value, I'd love if you could give me a rating and a review. Just a few seconds of your time can help me better understand the type of content you all enjoy, and it would mean the world to me to hear from all of you.